Just hours after at least 11 UMNO MPs withdrew their support and amid growing calls for his resignation, Malaysia Prime Minister Muhyiddin told the country today that he still commands the parliamentary majority.
In a televised national address, Mr. Muhyiddin also said the King has consented to a confidence vote when Parliament reconvenes next month. The announcement came after a morning audience with the King, who, according to Mr. Muhyiddin, only mentioned that 8 UMNO MPs had pooled their support.
Let's hear more from our Malaysia Bureau Chief, Shannon Teo, who's joining us from Kuala Lumpur. Mr. Muhyiddin has at most 104 out of 220 MPs, meaning he's 7 short of a simple majority. So, Shannon, where could the votes come from?
Well, to put it simply, there are 105 MPs in the opposition, presumably from that 105, but most of the opposition parties, most of the opposition leaders have said they've not pledged support for Muhyiddin. They don't know what he's talking about. As far as they are concerned, Muhyiddin is at 104 or less. So they want a confidence vote to happen now. If the Prime Minister is saying he still has a majority using a current tense, a present tense as it were, then let's go to Parliament now. Let's test it now. One opposition MP cheekily tweeted and saying that actually I think all the MPs are free tomorrow. Let's do it now. So nonetheless, it's only going to happen in September. We'll have to see what happens across this 1 month. At this point, I can't tell you who the Prime Minister is counting on besides the people already in his government.
So, Shannon, come September, what happens if Mr. Muhyiddin loses the confidence vote? Will that trigger an election immediately, or can a new PM be appointed based on who has the majority support in Parliament?
You're right, both things can happen. If Muhyiddin fails to prove his majority, then another MP can step forward. Another MP can try to cobble together a new government with a majority. Failing which, if there is no such candidate, it really leaves the King little choice but to go to an election, and this would be a pretty tragic outcome, given that the COVID pandemic is still raging in Malaysia. Today we recorded a new high of cases, 19,819, just short of the 20,000 mark there. And I think in the past few days, we also hit over 200 deaths in one day. There is one other option, something that in fact even Muhyiddin's own allies have been talking about a minority government. A government that maybe doesn't have a majority, but with regards to important bills like the budget, we've been talking about revoking emergency ordinances, which led to this crisis in the first place. If whichever government is in power can get an agreement with some of the opposition parties, if it can offer some policy solutions which are amenable to some of the opposition MPs, then they can cobble together what might be known as a confidence and supply agreement. So they aren't necessarily in government, they are still in opposition. But on certain key issues where there is an agreement, where there is some overlap, then they could vote in favor of the government. That's one solution going forward. So where we are right now over the next 1 month is perhaps what Muhyiddin might be thinking about is that he can come into such an agreement with some of the opposition parties. All of them are saying that we haven't signed any declaration saying that we support the government, but maybe Muhyiddin is counting on an arrangement like this, whereby you support certain bills, certain things that we have a common agenda together, and then I can remain in power.